I just want to appreciate your coming in early in the morning. Thank you so much. You're the real faithfuls. So thank you. How many of you went to the concert last night? And you still came. Wow. It was a good concert though, right? Okay, so just quick introductions. I have with me here Jan, who's one of our premier partners, who's an MVP and who's become a great friend of mine. Do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Jan. I'm from Norway. I work for a really small company called Cloudway. It's a company based of 6 MVPs, and we are actually kind of all around. We are based in Norway, Sweden, Ireland, and Florida. So yeah, I'm a EMS MVP. I've been working in this space for quite a while. And I will share some demos with you and some technical evidence. And then I'll also share experience for working with other partner in Norway, helping them do this Microsoft 365 security story.
So it's going to be a grounded session because I am the marketing guy for Intune. So my name is Mayank. I do product marketing for Intune, SCCM, and the EMS products. That's my Twitter ID, and that's Jan's Twitter ID. One of the best ways to kind of keep in touch, even give us feedback outside of the app and all the evaluation stuff. If you have other questions or feedback, feel free to tweet at us. We try to engage a lot on Twitter, so feel free to do that. I've been at Microsoft now for about 18 months, so compared to some of the other people, I'm brand new. And I'm sure I'm brand new compared to a lot of you who've been working with Microsoft for a long time. So I'm hoping to, I've learned a lot in these few months, and we'll try and bring you some of that goodness. I think what we're trying to achieve in this session is basically, the whole notion of EMS and Intune and Configuration Manager, if you know about it, has been on the management side, right? It's to manage your devices, manage your endpoints, which has been the traditional goal of products like Configuration Manager or SCCM. But now with the world changing a little bit, a lot of it is to do with security. And that's our goal here, to see if we can really achieve that understanding of how to have that security conversation with your customers and how to get started on this bigger M365 conversation without sort of having to change a lot of things that you already do or what you already have. So I don't know if that makes sense. Do you see customers, how many of you actually do deal with the Configuration Manager or Intune? If I could just see. Okay, so I would say about 50% of you already do this, but that means 50% do not, which is interesting to see. And when you go in for your conversations, when you're going in to sell either Microsoft 365 or Office 365, and you're having a management kind of a conversation with the IT manager over there, do you see the security people in the room, or are you having the security conversations as well, or are they separate conversations? How many of you do see security and management in the same room at the same time? So do I take it that the rest of you do see them sort of as separate conversations? And that's a key, I'm trying not to use the word problem, but that's a key change I think that we all need to bring to the customer, and also to ourselves, in making sure that they understand that these things are very, very interrelated now. Nobody does management of products because they feel like it, because they wake up one day and say, Intune released new features, let me go and deploy them, right? The reason is not because they love managing Macs and Windows and iOS. The reason is because they want to achieve a higher goal, which is to keep their organization secure, especially with all the good stuff that we have now, right? What comes with all this good stuff is a lot of complexity, and that's what we want to help you understand. That when you go back, you should be able to show your customers through the demos that Jan will share with you, how the management piece, the EMS, and the Intune and Configuration Manager is essential for their end-to-end security. So yes, we have security products, right? We've got Defender ATP, we've got AIP, we've got MIP, we've got all of these amazing security products that will give you security. But then you need something to manage that end-to-end security and have that visibility, which is what our product kind of helps you with. And like I was saying, it's all this complexity that the IT is drowning in. I'm sure your customers feel the same, that Microsoft 365 now has Office, it has Windows 10, it has the security products, and it has so much that you can do, and we've got different teams looking after it. So how do you enforce that kind of a conversation so that they understand, okay, let's start having an end-to-end conversation. Let's start looking at things with an end-to-end view. We've got some of these numbers that when I was researching for this session, we found Gartner and Forrester have these numbers which say, as we go into 2022, 75% of the customers are trying to build a digital workspace kind of a team, right? A single team that looks after both the end user experiences and the security. Similarly, they have a lot of gaps still in their GDPR deployment, which they are not aware of, and they need visibility, they need tools to help them, and then a lot of automation, which is the opportunity for you as partners to help them make sense of it all. So, when there are so many solutions out there, that's when we will talk about some of the ways that you can help them with the security and compliance and modern desktop services that come with it. I'm assuming you've seen this slide at least 70 times this week? No? Yes? Yeah, good. So what I liked about this was that in this session, you cover almost the 50% of that pie chart, right? Between the security and compliance, which is a lot more than what we talk about, right? We won't cover all security and compliance, but there is an element to it. And then we definitely cover modern desktop. And before I hand off to Jan, I just want to make sure we understand the new definition of what we call modern desktop. So the modern desktop is not just Windows anymore, even for Microsoft. So when we think of the modern desktop, we think of everything that people work on when they're using their Microsoft products like Office 365. Like I probably spend more time on my Outlook mobile on the phone than I spend on my desktop. So the desktop, even though it's an older term, is now beyond Windows. It's got iOS and Android and Mac and everything, every place where you run Microsoft products. And all of those devices are managed by Intune. All of those applications are managed by Intune. So that's the opportunity, not just the Windows piece. Does that make sense? So that's pretty much it. With that, I want to kind of get right to the meat of it, which is how do you start that security conversation, right? I mean, maybe one last show of hands, which is how many of you feel that this is something that has been some sort of a hesitance for you? Like, do you feel less than confident in having that security conversation with your customers? You do? Okay. So at the end, let's see if you feel a little bit better. So with that, Jan, it's all up to you.
Yes, thank you. So whenever I go to a customer, and if it's an Office 365 project, if it's a team project, or if it's an Intune project, I always try to start a conversation with the basic security. And it's so much easier if you just start with the basics, and then we can fix the rest later. The first thing I do is I try to talk to them about their current security posture. So how are they today? And the easiest way to show that to the customer, any idea how we can do that? It's just open Secure Score. If you get them to open Secure Score in their own tenant, you will immediately see how are their environment in the cloud seeing. If they are not moved to the cloud at all yet, then we have to do more work in advance. But if they have started using the cloud already, we can use Secure Score to easily see where we need to put down the effort. But also, it's always, when we start a discussion, it's always about getting the basics right. So what getting the basic right is we have to secure our identities. Identity, identity, identity. That's what we have to secure first. Because you move the data to the cloud, the only thing that's between your data and the attacker or anybody else is your identity, right? It's the most available service in the world, Office 365. All your data is in there, and the only lock is your identity. And of course, we need to reduce the attack surface, and we can also look into automated threat response and the more advanced stuff. But just by enabling stuff like multi-factor authentication, will reduce your compromise by more than 99%. By blocking legacy authentication, we can reduce the compromise by 66%. By implementing risk policies, We also reduce the compromise by 96%, and then we can go on and go on. And then we think, this is hard, right? People don't like MFA. But also, I also tried to show the customer this one, the identity secure score. That is something that's inside their Azure Active Directory tenant, and they can have a look and see how they are compared to others in the same industry. The only thing you have to do is to make this be correct for your industry is you go into the Office 365 portal and select your industry, and then it will show up compared to how it looks inside across the board. And also, we can use, of course, you can use Secure Score to find actual actions, right? So we can find actions that we need to do, like enabling MFA or other stuff. It all tells us how we can move forward. So it's not that hard to, get the first task running for what we need to do. And also, this doing MFA. So how many in the room can, with the hand on their heart, say they have enabled MFA for all admins, for themselves and their customers? This means that this room is above average. For this is still true. Right? Less than 2% of all admins on Azure Active Directory in the world have MFA enabled.
We cannot overstate the importance of doing that. And then you'll see such a huge jump in your security posture without doing anything else. So next year, we want to see a bigger number there.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw this number was at Ignite 2 years ago, and the number was 1.7%. Now it's 1.95 or something. It's bad. So why is this? Why is this happening? Why don't we enable MFA for our admins? This, right? As an IT guy, we don't like it. We want to make the work easy. And the end users, if we do MFA wrong, this is what they will get. They will get MFA all the time, and they will get MFA prompting up. And what happens if your phone keep on buzzing every 10, 15, or every hour? What happens? What does the end user do? Does he still think about, or does he just click? Right? So if you do MFA wrong, the security is away, because the user doesn't think anymore. So what we want to achieve is this, right? We want to enable MFA in a way that the end user is not, the end user experience is not broken. So I will show you during my session here now how we can achieve that. But let's start with step one. So we need to secure the privileged access, right? And by doing that, we need to use conditional access to enable MFA on all admin roles. And we need to block basic authentication. But we also need the emergency account. That's a recommendation from Microsoft as well. I know there's been a lot of discussion this week about the new partner network rules and MFA, and it kind of breaks with the emergency account thinking. But let's hope they go back on that, because I do need an emergency account. And why is that? So remember, it's been a little while ago now, but MFA was down, right? Was it last fall? It was down for 18 hours. So if you didn't have the emergency account, what would happen? Nobody would get in, because the admins will need to have MFA on all access, all the time. What if your network or mobile is out? You can't connect on your phone because the mobile network is down. Or the last admin leaves the company. Or there is a hurricane or whatever, and you actually can't get the MFA through to your phone. So the way to do this is that this should be a cloud-only account. It should not be a synced account. It should be purely cloud. It's not a personal account. I normally accept it from all conditional access policies. But now with the new feature where you can do FIDO2 tokens, that could be an option to secure the emergency account, because then you're not dependent on the other infrastructure. The most important thing is that they have a different MFA than the rest. So you can still do MFA, but it needs to be different. No password expiry, of course, it needs to be a global admin, and I totally recommend you to monitor usage of this account. One option is to use Cloud App Security if you have that, or you can just use Log Analytics to set up an alert rule. If this user is logged on, always make an alert so we know this happened. So how do we start the actual stuff with the customer? So the first thing I do is I create my own admin multi-factor policies. It's 2 policies needed, and it's the require MFA for admins, and it is a policy to block basic authentication. So let's do a short demo. So in here, I have created the policies already to save time. But what we're doing in here is that I have actually selected roles. So we can go in and set directory roles. But just to make sure that the admins, even if you use privileged access management, I want them to have MFA on logon. So the reason I'm selecting roles here is to make sure that if people didn't use the right naming convention on the admin users, I would still be able to target them for MFA. So I have made a group down here, and this group, the security group, all admins, except Break the Glass admin. It's a dynamic group based on naming convention. So all my users start with GA/. And here you will see that I have excluded the Break the Glass account. And the only thing I do here, I target all cloud apps. Let me know, can you see it in the back, or is it too small? Yeah. And I have 2 conditions. The one thing I do in here is I target only the modern authentication clients. This is because I have a separate policy blocking basic auth. And what we do here is just require multi-factor authentication. So this is all you need to enforce multi-factor on all your admins. How long do you think that will take? 5 minutes? I recommend you do it this way so you can have the exceptions you need. You might have a service account that actually needs to have admin rights, which you can't enforce multi-factor on because it's running and logging on in the background. You would need to accept those kind of accounts too. Also, the block basic auth. This is actually a little bit funny because in here, you need to create your own all users group. The reason for this is that they won't allow you to make a block policy for all cloud apps for all users. Kind of makes sense if you think about it, but I'm only blocking basic auth, so I want this, right? So in here, I don't have any exclusions. Even the emergency account doesn't need to use basic auth. So I target all cloud apps, and under condition, and this is actually crucial, is that it should only look like this. If you have anything else here, it's going to break, and you might lock yourself out. Because what we do down here is that we just do block access. By doing these 2 policies, you can just switch now. By doing these 2 policies, what we have achieved is secured our privileged accounts. So let's say you don't have Azure Premium. So you can use the baseline policies. I call this the sledgehammer approach, because the problem with the built-in baselines is that it was changed a couple of weeks ago, so we can't have exceptions anymore. Meaning, if you enable the require MFA for admins here, it's going to apply to every user. You can't have an exception. There is no button to do that. But if you don't have the license, and you have very small customers who doesn't have conditional access, this is still better than not doing it. So there are 4 policies that are the baselines. We have the require MFA for admins. It's the end user protection, which actually gives you risk-based access control without a license. But again, it applies to all users. Block authentication, the reason I'm not using this one is because it allows some features. It allows you to use, for instance, native mail on Androids using basic auth. I don't want any basic auth access to my Exchange environment. Require MFA for service management, it's all access through APIs and all access through the Azure portal. Again, you can't have any exceptions, so I created my own.
So the idea here is that even if you cannot achieve all of these steps, and you are having a longer conversation with your customer about Microsoft security, just by doing this much, you'll be able to show them immediate value. They can start seeing some of the immediate value of the security aspect of the management, and then that makes the rest of your conversations much easier. I think that's what we're trying to land here, right?
Yeah. So just by the 2 policies I created, it takes like 5 minutes, you can actually secure all privileged access to your tenant and make sure that at least the attacker can't get to your admin side of it. Of course, step 2 is to secure the rest of the users. And that's where it's really, really important to do this right. Because we do want the admin to have MFA every time, but we don't want the end user to have MFA on every logon to, when he starts Outlook, starts OneDrive, start Teams, log on to the portal from his managed client. So the way to do this is to use, of course, use conditional access. We need to protect all our apps, no exceptions, but we put the trust on the user and device level. I try as hard as I can with every customer not to have exceptions on IP ranges. I don't trust the network. If I can move away from trusting the network, I will have a better security. So we have compliance on the device, and we also have risk. So risk is the last thing I'm going to talk about later. So what we need to make this work, we need conditional access. That's basically available in all M365 SKUs now. Even M365 Business have full conditional access. So we can have device compliance, or on mobile devices, we can have app compliance. App compliance is where you say, hey, yeah, you need to use Outlook to access your email. You need to use the SharePoint app or the managed browser, which is now Edge, to talk to SharePoint. So what we can do here is that we will set a conditional access setup to require a compliant device, or just trust on the fact that the device is hybrid Active Directory joined. On the mobile devices, we can require compliant device, compliant app, or both. It's all up to us, and how kind of strict setup they do want. Also, when I say block unsupported platforms, is that because if you do this wrong, you will actually have a backdoor for Linux and Chromebooks and stuff that we can't have compliance on. And again, full block of basic auth, but we have already done that, because I apply that to all users. So that is already done.
And the right way, I like your use of the word right way, right? What does it really mean? The right way is the way that doesn't break the user experience. So I think that's where Jan started this conversation, and it's important to understand what we mean by the right way.
Yeah.
It's not that you're technically doing something wrong, but this way, you just make sure that you get the MFA without creating any hiccups in the user experience.
Yep. So don't enable MFA in the old Phonefactor portal. Okay? In that portal, the only thing you do in there is you can select different kind of services you allow for multi-factor. All users should have the status of disabled in that portal, because we use conditional access to control this. So if you want to establish basic device trust for Windows, right? So if you have Intune, the device is enrolled in Intune, we need a compliance policy and a configuration policy to configure the device. So when it's matching the policy, the device will be green in Azure Active Directory, and it's compliant. If for a hybrid environment, or if you're using co-management, what we need to do is to move the compliance workload to Intune, and we use the same compliance policies we created in step 1 here. But we can also create compliance policies in Config Manager and just say, hey, yeah, trust what's coming from Config Manager. So you have all the options here. But what if you don't have a management solution today, or you have a third-party management solution that can't talk to Active Directory, then we will put the trust on hybrid AD join only. So on the other platforms, iOS, it will be based on device compliance or compliant app. It's the same for Android. The same for Mac. On Mac, we have a third option is to integrate with YAML. So you can use YAML for managing the Macs, so you can have deep management of the Mac devices, and it will send telemetry into Intune so we can see the compliance for the Macs in Intune. So next demo. I'm just going to check my cheat sheet. So let's start with the conditional access policies I have set up. So I made a policy called require a managed device or MFA. So in here, I have included all users, and I have excluded only the break the glass admin. This is a simple setup. I target all cloud apps. And again, under conditions, you can see I only target the modern stuff. I don't target the other ones because I have already blocked it. And under the device platform, I say any device. What am I achieving with this instead of selecting Windows and Mac? Because this is not necessarily applying to mobiles. The reason I do this is because if I don't do this and I come with a Chromebook, this policy is not applying. Or if you come from a Linux. So by doing this, it will include any device, even though it's not supported. And by this, you will in fact block them because they can't be compliant. Or at least we will always have MFA on those devices. So the controls we have in here is that I either require the device to be marked as compliant, or hybrid AD joined, or MFA. So based on your requirements and the customer setup, this might look differently. But with doing this, at least we have the setup we need to get started. Let me just check. Yeah, and also, if you are, let's go on the mobile, the difference I have on the mobile platform, that on the mobile platform, I have included Android and iOS only, so I'm only targeting mobile devices, because the unsupported platforms are already covered by the first policy, right? And again, it's the same here. And the control here is that I will require approved client app. So this is a customer who doesn't want to make all users enroll, but we enforce them to use Outlook. So we enforce them to use the managed app from Microsoft to access our services. So if I wanted to combine it to also require the device to be enrolled, I would just take this one and say save. Then I will cover both scenarios.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure we get that. If someone's new to Intune or new to this management concept, you can manage the entire device, which is what many customers do, but you can also still have security if you don't want to manage the device, but just make sure that at least the apps that the data is living in is secure. So Microsoft supports that. So if you're using Office 365 on the phones and Outlook on the phone or Edge on the phone, then you can make sure that at least that is fully secured using this, using what Jan just showed.
Yeah. And if we are enforcing the users to use Outlook, we don't need ActiveSync anymore, right? So what I do then, I have made a policy that blocks Exchange ActiveSync. If you have devices, like meeting room devices and stuff that needs to use ActiveSync, we will just exclude them from this policy. But all the other users, this is an easy way to just block Exchange ActiveSync instead of doing this on all the mailboxes. This is much more simpler. So any kind of IMAP or EAS access to my Exchange Online is now blocked, basically. I don't have to do any configuration in Exchange to achieve that. But to actually have a device to be get in, we also need to have a compliance policy. So I've just made a Windows 10 basic compliance policy in here, and it's super, super simple. I only require the device to have a TPM chip. So this is just for demo, right? I can have much more settings in here. This is where you need to start to talk to the customer, right? What kind of requirements do you want to have? But this is just to show you it's actually working. So by combining those two scenarios and combining it with, if you go into client apps and combining it with app compliance policies, app protection policies, you will get the protected app as well. All right?
Good.
Yep. So by doing this, what really happens, right? So when the end user logs onto his managed laptop, he will no longer get that MFA prompt. But if he log on from anything else, then the devices we control, he will get MFA. So the user experience when he's doing his day-to-day work on his managed machine or device, he will not even notice that he is using MFA. But as soon as he move away or there is risk involved, he will get the MFA prompt. So what we're trying to achieve is that when the user gets an MFA prompt, he should know that he is expecting to have one, or else he should also know that something is wrong. That's the whole idea.
And all this is available to you in the E3. So think of this as a gateway to your E5, right? As you're trying to upsell Microsoft E5, what Jan has showed until now is stuff that you enable with what the customer already has. So again, that makes your conversation simpler. I mean, which is sort of the goal for this session, right? We want you to learn a lot of this, but also understand how do you go back and use this in your, with your customers, especially if there's some resistance or hesitance. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep going.
And then of course, we need to, now we have made the basic security, and then we go into the actual device management. And I'm going to talk only about cloud device management right now. And so device management on the different platforms. For Windows, we have Intune, and we have SCCM co-management. We can use both of those for cloud-managed PCs. So even if your device is only in the cloud, only Azure AD join, we can use SCCM co-management or Intune. The choice is ours. If they already have Intune, SCCM, use it. It's more powerful. But if they don't use Intune, it's good enough. For iOS, it's either Intune MDM or Intune App Protection, or a combination of them. And it could be a combination of user-enrolled or using the Apple Device Enrollment Program. For Android, use Android Enterprise. If you're using Android legacy management, you need to move quickly. That is going away really soon. On Android 10, that will be removed from the platform. So you need to move to Android Enterprise. And Android Enterprise is either fully managed, kiosk, or work profile. Mm-hmm. But also on Android, of course, we can just do Intune App Protection if you want to, if you don't want to have the enrollment. For macOS, we can use Intune. The Intune part of, for Mac management is growing in features. But if you really need hard management of Macs, I recommend you to look into YAML. They integrate really, really well with EMS right now. So for Windows 10, what I see as the most commonly used task is we need to manage Windows updates. We need to deploy our applications, management of BitLocker, and we need to configure and secure the devices with policies. And in there we have administrative templates, which is the equivalent to GPOs, and we have security baselines, which is equivalent to security baselines you can download and import in the GPO structure in Active Directory.
So this is where you start to see that convergence of management and security. So these are all traditional management functions, but you'll notice that now there's such a strong security component to each of them.
So the first point here is manage Windows updates. How important is that? Do we need to manage it? Who thinks we don't need to manage Windows updates? Fine, then we agree. So because it's really, really important to stay current. And the reason for that is if you don't, you will be more and more open to attack. The longer you stay behind on a patch or a feature release, the protection gap will be bigger. So what we want to be is on the far right of this one, where we don't have a protection gap because we patch rapidly all the time. Sometimes that's not possible, but at least we can control this with Intune. And the end user experience has gotten really great. I know we can't easily do the driver stuff and the other stuff, but at least we can give the user notification, we give him 2 days to reboot and all those kind of stuffs. We can do that today with Intune.
And we've added a bunch of other features, I think literally this month, next month, which will give you more granular control on that ability to defer your updates if you want, or roll back the updates and so on. But the main thing is to make sure the customer understands it needs to be done, again, for the sake of security, if nothing else.
Right,
Do we switch back?
Yep. So the first thing I want to show you here, that's not even on the demo slide, is software updates. So you can create all kind of Windows 10 update rings, and the only thing you do in here is that you select what kind of ring you want your use or your channel for your users. I really recommend you to have at least 3 rings if you have a bit larger organization. So you would have somebody on at least release Windows Insider. That will mean they will get it a little bit before the rest. If you are a bit bolder, you can do Insider Slow within your organization as well. And of course, semi-annual channel is the main channel, and targeted is for your pilot group, basically. That gives you the time to test and verify that the next release of Windows is valid in your organization. And also in here, we can define all kind of user interaction and install time for the different updates. And this is getting better soon, right?
Soon.
Where were we? BitLocker management. So to manage BitLocker, you need to create a profile to do the BitLocker configuration on your machine. And it's basically an endpoint protection policy. It's called endpoint protection. And what I've configured in here is under Windows encryption. And basically, we require the device to encrypt their hard drive. We required encryption level. So we changed it from 128-bit to 256. We allow the standard users to encrypt their devices. That was an issue before, where you had to be an admin to actually be able to put BitLocker in motion. We don't need that anymore. Any user, even if you're using Autopilot and the end user is a standard user, we can still enforce BitLocker policies on the devices. And also, of course, in here we define that the BitLocker key is getting into Azure Active Directory. So if you look on the one device I have, I can go down here, I can click on recovery keys. So I will see the recovery key for this device in Azure Active Directory. The end user can also do this. So the end user can self-service his own BitLocker key. So if he needs it, he can just open it on his phone. He will be required to use MFA to access that blade in his profile. But when that is done, he will be able to get his key.
And this is another example of something that is fairly recent in the sense that this didn't exist. BitLocker, this level of control did not exist in Intune. You had to use it from the on-premises solution, that is Configuration Manager, and you have parity now in the cloud. What you also have, something that we released literally during this event, was file vault support, which is the similar concept but for Mac OS. So now Intune also supports file vault disk encryption for Mac OS. So again, you have this one console from where you can manage the disk encryption, the recovery key, and everything for both Mac and Windows.
And also under device configuration, I don't know why this is not under device compliance, but under device configuration, there is an encryption report that you can show the status of all your devices. So if the TPM version and encryption readiness is not ready, you might have a bad TPM, you might have other issues, you might have a TPM that's deactivated, then you need to take physical action on those devices. What I see now is that the report is actually not updated because my device is encrypted, but I deployed it last night, so it's pretty fresh. So normally this goes pretty quickly. So what was the next? Windows, yeah, security baselines, of course. So who has been playing with security baselines? So security baseline was GA'd, what was it, 1.5 weeks ago,
yep.
2 weeks ago? Mm-hmm. And by that, they also released a new version. So if you have the old security baseline applied, remove that profile, recreate a new one with a new version. And here you will see it's really simple to create a baseline. You just give it a name.
4 characters.
Yeah, 4 characters. And then we have all the different configuration settings in here. I'm not going to go through them all because they're going to take a couple of hours. But you can also do a search up here, and you can find what kind of configuration you want to apply to your devices. I recommend you actually to start with this as the first policy you do before you do so much other configuration policies. The reason for that is there's a lot of policies in here, or at least a few policies in here, that you can also set as configuration policies. And if they are conflicting settings, it's not going to work. So you need to map those settings to and there is an export button here. If you have actually created a baseline, you can export it and have a look at the settings. So that's the security baselines.
This is again a very simple, straightforward way to at least get started. And if you remember, he talked about secure score. So this will reflect in your secure score going up. So from a customer conversation point of view, it becomes easy for you to again show that instant value, that here it is, here I'm applying all these, just the baseline policies, and look, your secure score went up.
Switch.
Yeah.
So now let's go a little bit deeper. So now we have the basics in place, right? Now we're going into features that actually requires us to have an E5 license. Because we do want to have risk compliance on our devices. So if something bad goes on the device or on the user for that matter, we can do policies that verifies if the user is secured and the device is secured before he actually gets in. So recently, Defender ATP released something called TVM. I hate the word number 3 here, so I'm going to say TVM. Threat and Vulnerability Management. That's the last time I'm going to say that word. So what we need to do to get started with that, we need to Defender ATP, and we need to connect it to Intune. By doing that, we can have a device risk conditional access policy, and we get access to the TVM dashboard, and we can also do management of security tasks. Like we started initially here, normally the management guy and the security guy or the security operations are different people. So how can we get them to talk together? Well, in Defender ATP, we can do that pretty simply, and I'm going to show you that now. So let's start with the device risk stuff.
And this is really important because our research has shown that a lot of the security incidents in companies happen because the incident was found or the hack was found, but nothing was done for it because the email chain was still going around the company bureaucracy. So this is one attempt to kind of cut through that. We'll keep developing some of the things here, but I think it's a good start again to cut through that and make sure that actions are taken quickly rather than just be left alone in a service ticket or an email somewhere.
So actually, I'm going to start with doing running of attack simulation on my VM. we should see one notepad starting up, all right? Then I'm going to leave this. So let's start with the TVM dashboard. So in here, if you look at the dashboard, it will tell us the organizations. I'm just going to close this down again. The exposure score in the organization. And it's also going to tell us about our configuration score. So how well are we configured, and do we have threats in our environment? So if you look on the right side, we have top security recommendation. One of those is update PuTTY. So if you click on this, yes, and I click on this one, it tells me that I have 2 machines that are exposed to this. It's 14 threats that are known, and they are exploited as well. I'll show you after that if there is a red bug on that threat, it means it's known exploits to that bug. So what we can do from here is that I can open a ticket in Intune. So what I do is I assign a task to the Intune guy to tell him that he needs to fix this. I am a security guy, I can't do this, so I need the Intune guy to do this. So I go in here and I say, please update PuTTY ASAP. And then I need to tell him that he needs to do this no later than tomorrow. And I'm going to submit the request. And what happens now in the backend is that it will be assigned a task in Intune to the Intune guy. And if you go back to the Intune console and look, it's actually under security baselines. Security tasks are in preview. But in here, we will see, well, it's not showing up yet, that task alone. But there's another one here who says update Windows. Because my machines are not patched, and me as the security guys need to push the Intune guy to make policies to patch faster. So this is how it will look, and then the Intune guy can accept or reject the task. Okay, I'm going to do it. And then you will see the task is assigned to me, and if you go back to the Defender ATP console, they will see that somebody has taken this task.
Now you even have the PuTTY task already.
Yeah, so here's the PuTTY task, and I can accept that. But if you take a look here, it says that, oh, what's going on? It says that the update task is active because I have taken it into my task role, and the other one is pending because nobody has taken responsibility for it yet. So let's say I want to update PuTTY. So I have cheated a little bit. So I have actually created, uploaded PuTTY, the version we need. The only thing I need to do then is to assign this one to all the users. And I'm going to do required because I need everybody to update this as soon as possible. And then I'm going to assigning this application to all my users. And this will deploy PuTTY to all my machines because every user in my organization uses PuTTY. Or else, of course, I will use the PuTTY group that has this application already. And now, also, if you go back here into this dashboard, it takes 24 hours before this reflects here. But then you will see the exposure score goes down. And you don't want to be as high as 61 because that is pretty high. You should try to stay below medium.
Sorry.
Yep, and also you have under configuration score, because if you take a look here on security recommendations, it's not only based on updates and apps, it's also on configurations. So one of the things we can take a look here is, for instance, enable this one. And here you will see under remediation options, we can see actually exactly what we need to do. We need to set this registry key. And if we can't do that by using administrative templates or doing other things, we need to run a PowerShell script to do it. There is always a way to make it happen. And this is really good information because the Intune guy, he doesn't know about this configuration. He's not a security guy, right? So this combines those two very well.
And this is the way that you remember we started by saying IT is drowning in complexity. Nobody has the time, or it's just not possible to keep up with all the security recommendations. So here's where the value of the Microsoft Cloud comes in. Based on any vulnerability that we find, maybe somebody is attacking in Asia, and that attack has still not happened here, but the cloud will figure it out, and that recommendation will spread across the globe so that you can take that action even before it starts hitting you.
Just really quickly, we see already here in the console that my device has now a risk level of medium. And if we go back to device compliance, you see the device is no longer compliant. And if I click on this, we will see that the policy is the risk compliance policy. This happens instantly almost. All right, we need to actually move on.
So that's pretty much the 3 steps that we were talking about, right? And does that make sense? So it's when you enter your security conversation, make sure you get your basic admin MFA enabled, so at least your admin is protected. Nobody can come in through that route. Then you protect your users, so that's protected. And then finally, you try and protect your devices as much as you can. And that's where it's the long tail, right? There's a lot of work you can do, but what we showed was almost the tip of the iceberg, some of the low-hanging fruit. And then I want to kind of end by talking about some of the partner evidence. So we've been working with a lot of partners such as yourself. Jan here has been working with a partner, I believe, in Norway.
Yes.
I think it's Lillevik. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Lillevik.
Lillevik. We've been practicing this all week. We didn't practice the content, but the naming. So can you tell us a little bit more about what was their experience? I believe they also started with not having much of a security practice, and then today they do it. Do they do it?
Yeah.
Are they happy?
Yeah, so Lillevik is a SMB partner in Norway. And on this picture is Marianne, who is the CEO, and it's Andreas, who is the CTO. And they have made an offering called serverless. Basically, what that means is that you have everything based on the full M365 stack. No file servers, no Active Directory controllers, it's all cloud. So when they started, they were basically selling Office 365 only. That's where their starting point. Has anybody else been there, right? Selling only mail and Office 365? And then how can we get to the next level?
Right. So what made them think of changing their business model? Why did they even think of going for security?
So what they were seeing is that they were not reaching out to their customers. They were not getting new customers because customers wanted more than they could provide them. And they decided that we are going to focus on the security part to make our offering bigger. And by doing that, they got higher trust with their current customer base, and they would get also higher margins on all their cases because every case was bigger, more revenue on the licenses, and also they do recurring add-on services on security maintenance. So basically, they're doing a small kind of security as a service. They are not MSSP, but they do deliver security as a service on the M365 stack. And what the CTO told me is that if they hadn't done this, they would actually lose customers.
And then how did they get started on this? Do you have tips to share with this audience?
Yeah, so when they started to look into this, the first thing they realized that they already had all the products they needed in the M365 stack. They didn't have to go out and buy third-party or add more third-party services to their offering. They had everything they needed in the M365 E3 stack. And for the larger customers, either the security add-on or the E5 stack. The challenge, though, was internal knowledge, because they were so used to just working with selling Office 365, so they had to do something to make their employees know this new stuff. So incentives was their answer. So they did an internal certification hackathon kind of style with, actually they had 3 Ignite tickets as the, for those who got there first, I think, yeah. At least there were Ignite tickets in the end if they did all the certifications. And by doing this, all the consultants, they met in the office after hours and did reading together and made themselves up onto the next level, so they were able to deliver this new stuff.
Yeah, and I was talking to a couple of partners here from Portland earlier, and I think it reflected, I was thinking about this when you were talking, that this is pretty much where you are today, right? It's like, yes, you have the tools, and then now you have the right people, but they're not trained. And what I'm hoping is this becomes an inspiration that somebody's done it, so you can do it too. And I'm really grateful to you for sharing the story from Norway, because I'm disappointed that they could not be here themselves, but I'm very, very grateful to Marianne for sharing her story with us. So thank you for that. And I think we have seen that this has affected their business in a very, very positive way. You know? I mean, like you can see out here, they've differentiated in the marketplace. They've sold more of Office 365. They even became partner. What does this one mean?
So they was awarded the Microsoft Partner of the Year for digital transformation in the SMB space in Norway, based on making this new offering. So they have made a huge impact in the market, and they are a pretty small company in Norway. And the customer size is somewhere between, I think, 30, 40 to 200-300 people.
Yep, so that's where we have a quote from Marianne again, like Jan mentioned, you know, that without this focus on security and the offering, they wouldn't even be considered by many of their customers. And I sincerely believe that. I don't know, you know, what your experience is, but as we go into this next couple of years, we expect this to be the dominant theme. And also to help you kind of, again, go from that E3 to the E5, you know, whether you're on Office E3 or you're even on old, you know, Office Perpetual, how do you get that incentive to the customer for making that move in small and easy steps to get there? And that was the theme that I was sharing when I was walking around earlier, that the idea is to help people understand that this is not a turnkey project. You know, a lot of people think of this as a very overwhelming. They think, oh, we are a small company, whether it's you as a partner or the customer, and they're like, this is for the big guys, man. I mean, I can't do this. This is just too much, this cloud stuff. And I hope we were able to land the fact that you can take these baby steps and still get there. Very, very, I would use the word easy a little carefully, but it's relatively easily.
It's easy.
And that, I just want to leave you with a few resources. There's a ton of information out there. I hope this was useful, but you should follow our blogs. So a lot of in the cloud world, the one thing that's constant is change. If you go to the What's New Intune page, it updates literally every week now. It used to be updated monthly, but of late we've been releasing stuff so frequently that I can't keep up. Like I found out that we released File Vault when I logged in during the demos. I'm like, oh, we released File Vault, you know. So things are releasing very quickly, and that's the best way for you to kind of keep up with that. There is the tweets that I mentioned. So if you follow a bunch of these Twitter IDs, we keep making sure that we don't only share the announcements, but also some of the technical tips and tricks. There are a lot of fast track resources for you as partners and also for your customers directly. One of the things that was really popular at the booth was the roadmap. When I was showing the roadmap, I realized a lot of people don't realize that we have a public roadmap now, and Intune has a very big presence over there. So we don't have secret NDA roadmaps anymore. We try to share as much as possible, be very transparent. Even if the things are out there, we often slip at least by a quarter. Sometimes we slip by more quarters, but that's part of the game, right? That's part of the definition of roadmaps. They're never a commitment. They're more of a direction. But that's a great way, again, for your customers to get that information directly, or you can get it for them. So keep an eye on that. And then we've got some of these amazing security deployment resources, which you should check out. I was talking about the new incentive programs and a lot of the business-related stuff that you must have heard during the week. So I think there's a 15% and a 40% threshold. Intune is there in both of them. So you have tons of opportunity to make money over there. That's pretty much it. You'll get these PowerPoint recordings. You'll get the presentations in your scheduler. But we do want you to go into your apps and leave an evaluation. If you have more feedback, if you have like bad feedback, his name is Jan. If you have good feedback, my name is Jen. So there's a small spelling difference, but be careful. And then
If
send
you
us
have,
those.
if you have questions or whatever, I'll be around after.
Yes.
And if you don't have time now, just pop me on Twitter.
Please, yes, we'll be hanging around for your questions. And how many of you kind of agree with this sentiment that we were trying to land, that you can now go back and have this end-to-end security conversation with your customers? Yes? Okay, that's good to know. I'd like to give you all a big round of applause. Thank you so much for being here early in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you have safe flights home. Bye-bye.